Welcome back to In a Pinch podcast. I am particularly excited about our guest today. Not only was Michael our very first customer, but as I was telling him before we got started, I am particularly excited to interview a real life rock star at the risk of embarrassing him. Today's guest spent more than a decade as a touring drummer. Before he transitioned into the world of artist management, tour marketing, and eventually at Manhead, where he joined first as a customer service manager, spent 7.5 years building their e-commerce operations from 2 million in gross revenue all the way to 20. Along the way, he's managed merch operations for some of the biggest names on the planet, from Harry Styles, Michael Jackson, to Pink, and more. My daughter is going to be particularly excited about that. He's now founder and director of customer experience at Front Row and a partner of ours at Ceremony of Roses. What makes him, in our mind, the absolute perfect guest for this show is that he's never actually been a fraud vendor or a risk theorist like us or a lot of our previous guests, but he is the person who has actually been in the war room when drops have gone live, bots hit checkout, when you have that sort of 60 seconds to make a decision on what is the best move for a particular artist. So Michael Rasile, welcome to In a Pinch, and super excited to have you. With that very long introduction, would love to hear from you what that journey has really been like. You've come from an incredibly diverse background into what you're doing today. Walk us through what that pivot really felt like, especially at the very beginning.
Well, that was a heck of an intro. I think of all my time on stage, I think I'm more nervous for this than I think I ever was for any of those shows. But I will try to compose myself, kick away some of the stage fright. But no, I mean, thank you for having me. I'm very much looking forward to this. It's been quite a road that I've been on, and I've been very lucky to have had a lot of really important people in my life and a lot of really important moments to call upon to get me here. So, I mean, basically, I was doing customer service while I was on the road. It was kind of a way for me to earn income because in today's day and age, like we talked about with independent artists, there's no money in music, not at that level. So you kind of have to have a side job and stuff. And so it was for me a way that I could continue to earn income while I was on the road. And then it kind of morphed from there. And honestly, the irony was that the pandemic, which was obviously very difficult for a lot of artists, myself included, also created an opportunity for what at that time was my side hustle, which was doing customer service for a music merchandising company. And all of a sudden there was no touring. So these companies were heavily reliant on their e-commerce business. And at that time, the company that I was at, along with basically every other music merchandiser, had to pivot. And their e-commerce branches started to look more and more like traditional e-commerce companies rather than just where, you know, the touring business would send their leftover tour returns. And so because of that, the infrastructure started to become more sophisticated, and you start to see, you know, returns platforms being involved and package protection, and then even, you know, fraud mitigation and stuff like that. And so it was really during that time that I was able to kind of hone what I was doing and try to have some semblance of an expertise at it. And then from that, having the opportunity to leverage that and my insights and my knowledge to be able to do it on my own and attract, you know, other clients that were looking for what I was doing. So that pivot was honestly, it was for such a seismic shift. It was about as clean of a cut as it could have been. I was abroad. I was visiting my grandmother's in Germany. And at that time, I had the band that I was primarily working with. We had just put out an album, and it was kind of that classic what now moment, right? Like you put the music out, you do some touring, you kind of say, okay, cool. Are we making another record? What are we doing next? Are we doing more touring? And I was just kind of like, I've been doing a lot of the same thing for, again, at that point, 8 or 9 years, up to almost 10 years. And I started to say, well, maybe there's something else. Maybe I can be using my brain in a different way. And I had an opportunity to potentially source new clients and going on my own. And right around that time, actually, the guitar player in that band was basically like, hey, I think I'm good. Don't want to do the artist thing. And it was kind of that moment of like, okay, well, we don't have anything on the books. I don't have any music. I don't have anything to really work on. And there's this opportunity to kind of stake it on my own. And I kind of had that moment when I said, okay, I think this kind of makes sense. And again, kind of right place, right time. And a lot of really, really good people looking out for me and looking out for what that situation was going to be. And so that gave me the opportunity to kind of go. So it was a nerve-wracking little bit, and then it was kind of a hurry up and wait, kind of sit around and see what was going to happen. And then from there, it all kind of then became an avalanche, and here we are. So that's the short version, I guess.
That's amazing. One of these days, we're gonna actually meet in person, and I
Hmm.
want to hear the long version of it. But it's actually such, even though it seems like such a crazy background to in the from and to, it feels like actually the most natural sort of transition, Michael. And as a working musician, in fact, you stood on that other side of the merge table, as
Hmm.
you pointed out, right? And sort of how you even got into this, like everything from counting stock to watching BenQ, seeing what sells, what doesn't. And really, it is about that lived experience. Would love to hear like how that lived experience you've been through has shaped the way you think about protecting drops and access to fans today. It's something that you have felt personally. So I think you bring a lot of that experience to it, but would love to hear how that shapes your frameworks and how you make decisions today in the midst of those crazy drops that you experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think one of the most important things and something that I was able to learn from my time of kind of doing both simultaneously is how critical of a role that merchandise plays for both the artist and then also for the fan. And so, when I was coming up with the idea for my company, I decided to call it a fan experience company because I felt like those were the most critical pieces is both the fan, but then also the experience that they are having. And so for fans, I think, it's more than just wearing a blank t-shirt or whatever, when they put on a shirt and it's their favorite artist, that's something that they deeply identify with. And that's what they want the world around them to know about them at a first glance. Like, hey, I really love Harry Styles or something like that, right? And that says something about that person. And so having a good experience from when they show up to the show and buy the thing, or when they go online and they click purchase and it shows up at their door and they have that exciting moment when all they're getting is junk mail and then finally they get that package, right? Like they open that up and they see that shirt that they've been looking for. You want that to be as seamless of an ideal experience as possible. So that's very, very critical. And then also on the other side, having been the artist, understanding that the merch, honestly, from a DIY level all the way up to a Zach Bryan, that's how they make most of their money, right? Like for the DIY musician, that's how you get from city A to city B. And so that merch connection is so vital. So having respect for it both as the fan, but also as the artist who's selling that and being kind of a conduit for that is something that I really enjoy being able to do because I've been both, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's such a fantastic way to think about it. And actually, on that note, you have obviously through your current role, working with Sony and Ceremony of Roses, you've obviously managed operations for a roster of incredibly large artists. For people outside the music business, what does day in the life of artist merchandise operations actually look like? Whether it's in the midst of a drop or preparing for a drop.
Yeah. That's a great question. Well, first of all, I will give the political answer that I'm so very lucky and gracious and honored to get to work with such big artists, which is actually true. I mean, there are definitely pun intended pinch moments where it's like, wow, can't believe that name just came on the screen. So it's a very important thing to always kind of be grounded and realize where you are. And so I do feel very lucky to have the experience to work with such big names and some really, really talented artists, both, contemporary, but also throughout the past, 3 to 4 decades. As far as the day to day, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, which is something that I learned also touring, where you show up to the show and then you're there 4 hours ahead of doors and you do nothing and you just walk around or play pool or something like that. And so a lot of what happens is, we get information that comes down from, artist teams or labels or something like that. And they say, hey, XYZ artist is going to have a drop and it's going to be huge and it's going to happen on Friday. And is this ready? Is this ready? Is this ready? And you're like, yeah, everything's ready. And you have all the pieces together and you're ready to go, right? And then Friday comes and it's 10 and they said it's going to drop at 10 and you look around and you're like, oh yeah, they pushed it. They're going to do it on Monday. and then all the people that were involved, from me to the store manager to Pinch, everyone go, yeah, sorry guys, it's Monday instead. And it's so it is kind of, you have to get used to kind of that cadence of things. And so that's kind of a chuckle, but it is truly part of it. And then from there, I mean, there's such a joy in the spontaneity of it, because, you have a set of things that you're going to do that day and you think that's going to happen. And then all of a sudden something's going to drop, and it does really, really well. And it does better than expected. And that's great. And so there's a certain temperament to not want to pull your hair out on that. But if you have the patience for it, then it's a really rewarding experience. And to be a part of something that's so fundamentally important for a lot of people is a special experience.
That sounds
Awesome.
amazing.
Yeah. Let's talk drops, Michael. I'm running out of hair to pull at this point, but
I think I could feel Chirag's back straighten when I said that.
Back to drops.
Mm-hmm.
Look, most artist drops, they probably live or die in that first 5 to 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we've seen with you drops where the entire purchase window is essentially bots going in and, hitting those purchases. I think for our listeners, it'd be very interesting to know, right, like what it feels like inside the war room during this window. What's sort of the worst case scenario that you're bracing for, especially around popular artist drops? So just love to hear that in your own words.
Yeah, it is definitely pretty intense, albeit much easier with a tool like Pinch, honestly, because the ability to fight automation, fight fraudulence, fight scrapers with the same type of technology is super critical, because it used to just be these four eyes just looking and trying to figure it all out and making it all happen. So it is definitely easier. But no, I mean, ultimately, the most important thing is like being able to notice what actually is fraudulent behavior versus just kind of a normal flow. And so much of that is kind of understanding and having a little bit of the lexicon of like the normal frequency of orders that are coming in based on the artist. And so, like, for example, working with Harry Styles on this most recent drop, I've never seen anything like that. It was like watching a roulette machine work, right? I mean, I will never forget that as long as I live, because within an hour, there was, I don't even know how much it was, 6 figures of orders, as far as just hundreds of thousands of orders. And it was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. And so that was on a different scale of anything that I've ever seen. However, under the normal circumstances of any, even 10 to 20,000 units in an hour or something, you kind of know what it looks like, and you kind of know the normal pattern, because you're following kind of these spikes, and you're looking at the reports on Shopify, you're looking at when social media posts are going out, you're looking at activity. And then when something doesn't quite look right, whether it's a cluster of certain addresses or whether it's orders that are all tripping and there are, letters misaligned and stuff like that. And so that's really when you start to say, oh, okay, well, we might have a problem here. And, I think they're all varying levels of severity and what's the most important thing. And there's a couple of different things that, we look for on our end. Is obviously you want to complete the sale, you want to generate revenue, but also we have this charting feature that I'm sure that is unique to our industry, where just a little bit about charting is, everyone is colloquially heard about getting a #1 record. That's what we kind of talk about with charting and getting a Billboard #1. And the rules around that are extremely strict and nuanced. And so having an understanding of those things is very important. And so there is a direct correlation between fraud and bot behavior and how well an artist can chart, due to a variety of circumstances, which we can obviously talk about as well later. So, you have to be very diligent about making sure that those orders are going to the right, to the right fans. And then if it's not a pre-order for charting music and it's just a high value, product or something, our ability to fulfill orders with our current warehouse partner is lightning fast, which is a huge asset, but it also can be a liability. And so in these situations where we put a, high valued or highly coveted item on the website and it sells out, within 20 to 30 minutes, and let's just say 80% of that is going to bots or to fraudsters or freight forwarders, we don't have the ability to actually turn that around. Utilizing cutting edge technology to make sure that it's going to the right places is absolutely mission critical for what we do. But there's a little bit of a high to it for sure. The kind of adrenaline rush of watching it kind of go through is a fun part of it for sure.
I'm glad you brought up the Billboard chart eligibility. If you don't mind, just sort of talk about, as far as artists are concerned, right? So you've got two competing priorities, one which is blocking freight forwarders, and then second is protecting your Billboard chart eligibility, because Billboard, if I understand correctly, doesn't count freight forward sales. But at the same time, if you cancel these orders too aggressively, you can also sort of threaten your chart position, right? So if you cancel the wrong ones, especially. So talk to me a little bit about how you think about freight forwarders and resellers. I know we always joke about the freight forwarder belt, right? Like the Florida, Delaware, Oregon states that keep showing up as reshipping hubs all the time, especially for international resellers.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to sort of hear how you think about this and like, what are the trade-offs? What's that fine balance that you'd look to achieve, especially around international artist drops?
Yeah. Well, as somebody who is currently living in the Bible Belt, I've never heard freight forwarder belt, but we're going to try to coin that after this. So I'm gonna hold on to that one. And it's a great question. And I mean, it is, again, very specific to this industry. And, the whole Billboard thing is such a big part of the music industry and part of like the artist's rise to the summit of, where they want to go to be respected and also commercially successful. Because again, everybody has heard of, oh, that album got gold, that album went platinum, that album went #1, but they maybe don't understand exactly what goes into that. And so Billboard is a big part of that. And so to bore and spare the details of the criterion that goes into it, ultimately a lot of that is so, like I said, it's so parallel to the experience of this fraud forwarding and stuff like that. But it also can, and this is an important part too, it can also be in contradiction with the other point of selling records, which is to make money, right? And so the more records you sell, the more money you make. So just because a freight forwarder in Florida buys 50 of your records and those aren't going to count towards Billboard, you're about to sell 50 albums at, let's just say, $20 a pop. That's not bad revenue, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, as with all good questions, there's always one good answer, and it depends, right? It's hard to say, and ultimately it comes down to consulting with, the organization. For me now, in this case, Ceremony of Roses, and they will consult with store manager or with the managers themselves, the record label, and everyone gets to set a priority, right? Like, hey, we are actually, the goal of this release is to chart. Even if it's not #1, this, we want to get this artist as high as possible up the charts. So you need to be very, very strict about what orders you let out, right? Okay, fine. The next artist might say, we got a #1 last time, or we don't really care about that. It's all political. Let's just make a bunch of money. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then you let some of that go, right? And then you have the obligation to then the artist that maybe what they don't know is, hey, when you send all those 50 records to that freight forwarder in Florida, they're going to say they didn't get any of them. They're going to do a chargeback on their American Express card, and then you're not even going to get that money, right? And so that is also a piece of that. So it's so not only artist specific, but it's also drop specific. And like sometimes, let's just say it's like 7 inches, like single record. A lot of those don't chart. So that really is just inventory. So sometimes I'll bring up, hey, this person's they bought 150 7 inches. Okay, great. And it's like, I'll show you that this is fraud, this freight forwarding, they're sending it wherever, blah, blah, blah. And it's fine. There's no problem. So all I can do is try to give the best information and then let teams make their choice. And that's okay with me,
Yeah, no, great answer. Great the way you're thinking about it. Depends, right? The artist ultimately decides the course that they want to follow. So let me maybe ask you this, right? So before tools like Pinch, I would imagine a lot of the merchandise fraud defense is you or somebody like you scrolling Shopify orders, you're eyeballing duplicate addresses, looking for patterns in emails, and essentially 4 a.m. cancellations just before fulfillment.
Yeah.
Today, now, it's been more than a year of us working together. What does good look like for you? And what part of your job today would you like to automate the most next?
What does good look like? Good. Yeah. I think, I think what I'll say is, I guess, first of all, when you guys originally reached out to me and we kind of talked about what the use case and what you guys were building, which was a little bit more about that post-purchase process. And we kind of had that conversation and I said, yeah, that makes sense. That's good. But here's what I really need. And just how easily you guys were able to kind of accommodate that need and also recognize a gap and something in the marketplace that you guys could fill. I will always give you guys tremendous credit for recognizing that and pivoting in such a way. And I think that you guys are working with, merchants similar to myself in this space that have also identified that they need that. And so I think hopefully that has shown proof of concept for you guys and for the greater music merchandising and honestly entertainment merchandising in general, because I think there's a lot of opportunity just period, but maybe that's a different podcast. But as far as what good looks like, I think that the line between a super fan and somebody who is, let's just say, freight forwarding or is trying to do certain fraudulent activity is actually pretty thin. And ultimately respecting that line is kind of the ethos of the fan experience, right? Because if I am the biggest, and we'll just keep picking on Harry, if I'm the biggest Harry Styles fan, and I bought one of everything and I'm so excited to get it and it's all sold out now. And then Michael comes through and says, you're obviously not a real fan, and I cancel that. That is so harmful to that brand reputation of Harry Styles, which is not me, right? And so I am operating on behalf of him. I almost have, to be dramatic, I almost have a fiduciary duty, right? To both Ceremony of Roses, but also to the artists themselves to say, hey, this is legit or this is not legit. And that's a very important part of what I do. And I do take that seriously. And so being able to say that is a real fan or, hey, that's some fraudulent activity, I think it's best for us to cancel it. That line is very thin, and that could potentially tarnish that fan's image of the artist and of the, how they're spending their money, the patronage that they want to have. And so we have to be very precise about that. So I think that good, utilizing tools like Pinch, and obviously there are other ways to do this as well, and it's getting more and more sophisticated. It's really about trying to get that efficacy rate as high as possible and say, well, when we cancel these orders, we get it right 98% of the time, 99% of the time, and then maybe one day 100% of the time. That's really just so critical for just giving that ultimate fan experience all the way around.
And are there any, and this is sort of me sourcing our roadmap a little bit, are there any features or like cool functionalities that you think would help further improve this? I like that part that you spoke about, which is how do I identify a super fan from just somebody that's a freight forwarder? But curious if you've gone, I wish I had this other piece of information, and that would let me absolutely take a call here with these orders.
Do I get a consultancy fee if I tell you what I'm doing? Yeah.
Always, Michael.
Is this,
Always.
No, I mean, I think, well, two pieces. I guess the immediate need that I look at that is kind of, I would say, almost maybe kind of closing the loop of kind of this whole Pinch experience is kind of pre-purchase, post-purchase would actually be the chargeback piece itself. And so, like, for example, right now, I'm working with 150 to 160 Shopify stores in the US, probably about 40 in Australia. So we're talking about, let's just say, a round number of 200 Shopify stores, right? If every one of them had one chargeback, that would be 200 chargebacks to build a case on. And I'm going to go ahead and play spoiler that some of them have more than one, some of them have more than 10. And so it's taking me literal hours of my time to build cases against these customers that are just kind of, I mean, some of them I get where they're coming from, but a lot of it is erroneous chargeback stuff. And so luckily Shopify has rolled out some extra features to help with that. I think Shopify Protect has been great. They're also using AI suggestions to kind of help build some of that stuff, but it's simply not enough. And there's still a manual process for me. If it were me, if I had the ability to basically from iteration to execution of, hey, this customer places this order, this is their history that we have on Pinch, right? This is everything about this. We're building this complete customer profile. They just did a chargeback. Here, Shopify, here's
Yes,
all of this information to show why this should be actually a legitimate charge. And they're just upset that the product didn't show up in time. It's not exactly what they wanted, or they're confused and they're just like, I'm done with this, right? That would be incredible because then I wouldn't have to touch it. And that's hours of my time back.
Lovely to hear that. We are
Yeah.
actually in the midst of building out a dispute evidence enrichment feature. So actually, we'd be really, really stoked to get your feedback on some of the alpha versions of it. No, music to our ears. Amazing to hear.
Cool.
Thank you for that. Very, very helpful.
All right, we're going to go into a little bit of, as we call it, lightning round.
Okay.
These are questions you need to answer from the top of your head. Don't think about
Okay.
them too long, short, long. I'll take anything. Okay, ready for this? Awesome.
Probably not, but we'll see what happens.
Need a favorite fraud story. Craziest one you've encountered.
It's like,
You don't
where do I
name,
start?
name names or people, but thing that had you thinking, holy crap, like what is happening?
I guess favorite would technically, it's like it would be my least favorite because it's what sticks right here, right? I will be happy to discuss that because I always know what it is. So back in the day, this will be a long answer. I will have shorter ones later, but this one is worth listening to. So back in the day, so again, we talked about Billboard. Billboard changes their rules a lot. So in 2020, actually, back then, you were still able to do digital downloads with merch items, which was a huge thing because, I mean, this is still in the age of Shopify. Nobody cares about digital downloads, right? But you want that shirt. So there's an artist. He has a long name, but he goes by 3 letters. And anybody that knows me knows exactly the artist that I'm talking about. I no longer work with this artist, but I do begrudgingly say that it was a very important part of my career because he gave me my first 2 number ones that I have been a part of. And this first experience. The artist basically put all of these $10 tees up right before the album was going to drop, right? And so basically, albums usually drop on Friday. You report all your units to Billboard by Monday, and then they close that first week. And so it's a big deal to debut your album at number 1, right? So Wednesday before the album comes out, they put all these shirts up online. They're not made. Their art file is like blurry. It's literally just like, hey, $10 tees, like just get people to purchase this thing. And it goes crazy. And so it also happened to be the weekend of my mother's 60th birthday. And if you guys all remember during COVID, we weren't really allowed to like do a lot, right? But it was like she had a beach trip planned. It was her 60th birthday. We were going to do like some like social distancing thing. And it was like obviously really important. So I was like, that's fine. This is like the one to risk it for, right? And so I went and I was still working though and all that stuff. And so it's Thursday or whatever, but her birthday is on the Friday. I'm not making basically any of this up, I think. Or maybe this is all just trauma response. But so it's Thursday and I remember looking at my laptop and okay, it's all looking good. And like, okay, the orders are coming in. All right, I'm going to like work 1 more hour and then I can go. And all of a sudden, I am not kidding. Probably about 50,000 orders were placed in probably about 5 minutes. And at this time, I was working, when I was in previous company, I was just me. I was the only one doing customer service. And so all these orders come in and I go, well, that's good. But then I don't know about this. This is like kind of strange, right? And so I'm kind of looking at, and then I go over to my customer service platform, which I'm using Gorgeous. And I see like about the same amount, about 50,000 tickets of people saying, can I cancel? 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 And I was like, and so I called my boss at the time, shout out Bruce. I called Bruce and I was like, Bruce, I don't know what's going on here. This doesn't look right, right? And so what we surmised happened, and we'll never know, was that, so again, these Billboard places are very tight, and it's literally the difference between thousands of units could get you a number 1 versus not. What we have surmised happened is that potentially, allegedly, not saying this happened, there were certain artists and artist teams or labels or somebody that was interested basically locked up those units knowing that they wouldn't scan. And then by putting in those cancellation requests, basically knowing there would be no way to get to all of those. Yeah. And then it basically locked it up through the period of time to get to the Billboard. We got through most of it, And it did end up working out. There was a happy ending at the end, but that is absolutely one of the worst, best fraud moments that I've ever had in my entire
Not
career.
just because it was so crazy and damn, if only you'd had Pinch back then. But also, I guess, yeah, from a timing perspective, that's not one you're ever gonna forget.
No, absolutely not.
That sounds insane. Amazing. So on that thinking about underestimated risks, right? Look ahead 12 to 24 months. We never think about time horizons longer than that because who knows what's going to
Because how
happen in the
can we?
world. What is, especially in your universe, what is like a fraud or abuse vector, and especially in artist merchandise that you think the industry is still dramatically underprepared for? Where do you think this is going?
Mm.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, that's a different podcast. But honestly, yeah, this is really good. Good question. So I would say what I have noticed start to become more popular, and I think I know why, or I have a theory. I've noticed that customers are very eager to place chargebacks in a way that I don't usually see. And again, I think we go back to the whole customer versus fan experience thing, right? Like fans usually, they're not going to necessarily do a chargeback, or they're not going to send back rocks instead of the item because they feel like they're hurting their artist that they have a connection to, right? But I've started to see this behavior where, a customer will reach out to me or my team and they'll say, hey, what's going on with this order? And maybe we'll say, like, let's look into it. Boom, chargeback right away. Or, hey, this is a pre-order that comes out next week. Boom, chargeback, right? It's starting to become like the knee-jerk reaction, or even if they don't hear back from me for a day, boom, chargeback. And so people are going to that so much quicker right now. And I personally think it's potentially due to the cynicism around AI and how people engage with the internet, of saying like, oh, this is fake. This is a fake website, chargeback, right? And there's just so much skepticism around, just engaging with the internet in today's day and age. And why I think that that's a really important thing to be aware of is that the infrastructure around chargebacks and the infrastructure around the banking side is the burden is heavily, heavily, heavily on the e-commerce platform to prove that it is not chargeback.
Yeah.
I think that's a leftover remnant of kind of the disruption 2015, 2016 internet, where everyone was giving you free stuff and it was, very, very customer centric and 2-day shipping and you can free returns and, we'll send you anything that you want to make it better. And now we're kind of in this age where customers kind of know how to manipulate that.
Yeah.
And I think that they do that very effectively with their bank. And so I think that I wouldn't say that that's necessarily something that is agnostic to the music industry, but where I think that it does impact the music industry is kind of what I originally talked about of
Yeah.
we're not used to people engaging with us like traditional big box retailers or something like that. And now there seems to be more of a prevalence of people doing so. And
Mm.
so being aware of how that changes how you engage with your customer becomes really important.
That's such a great call out, Michael, because, what we see actually very, very related to that. The world is also moving in the direction of agents acting on behalf of customers. They may be good customers, but agents with sort of too much access, or with agents hallucinating and
Mm-hmm.
not realizing what's happening. That's a whole evolving world, right? Like, what if it is a genuine customer,
Mm-hmm.
an agent made a purchase or excessive purchases on their behalf that they didn't necessarily authorize or
Mm-hmm.
didn't intend to authorize? Where does chargeback liability even sit?
Mm-hmm.
We see that coming quite a bit. And then, exactly to your point, you already have humans who have figured out how to manipulate both the chargeback ecosystem, the purchasing ecosystem, and then what we see off a lot, which is returns ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have, the very same humans armed with agents at machine scale being able to figure out every nuance, every defense that you've put up. So definitely agree. It's a fast emerging threat, but I especially like that you called out like this interesting nuance or flip side where trust is generally eroded because there is a higher cynicism about what is real, what is fake. And
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that actually being called out. And that's super, super insightful. Amazing. So advice to a newbie. If you had a new ops lead who just took over an artist's e-commerce, pre-order live in 30 days, they have no access to fraud tooling, they can only do manual cancellations. Think back to your world a few years ago, if you will. What is the very first thing you'd have them kind of go look at and figure out?
And you can't say, don't do it.
I was going to say, find a new job. Look elsewhere.
Look elsewhere. Not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that was like, yeah, locked in on, that was it. Well, now I have to come up with a real answer. So that's so good. Thanks, Jayan. Okay. Damn, that was good. So I guess what I would say, so you're a newbie, okay, music industry. So, okay, couple of things, and we haven't even actually talked about this facet of everything, but the WMS system in your warehouse, I would say the first thing you would want to do is understand the strengths and weaknesses of your warehouse, of the WMS system that they use, because I've worked with, in about 8 years, I've worked with probably 7 or 8 warehouses. And what I can say is that they all have their strengths and weaknesses. They all have something to do really well, and they all have something that keeps you awake at night. And same thing is true with WMS systems, is like, wow, this thing is so great at doing this. It's not so good at doing this, right? And so understanding that is going to be really, really important. Both, obviously, we're here to talk about fraud stuff. It's important for that, but it's also important for the actual fulfillment piece and understanding where potential issues might lie. Like, hey, they're really quick, but they make a lot of errors, or, they're slow, but when those packages go out, it's going to the right customer. Like, that's going to tailor the expectation that you provide there to the customer. So I would say that would be probably one of the pillars. I think the pillar that would be in the middle is hopefully you at least have somebody that you're communicating to, either as a store manager or just directly to the artist team. And they can kind of give you a download of how the fan base usually engages, because every artist has a different fan base. Beautiful thing. It's really cool to see how different, fans engage with their artists. Sometimes they're really needy. Sometimes they're going to hit you. You send them a message and they're sending you a message right away again. And you have to know how to handle those fans. You have to know how to, that just means they're passionate, right? So you have to take that passion and channel it in a positive and constructive way. Sometimes you get fans that, nope, they're just whatever, right? And that's all good too. And it's just a different kind of thing. And so understanding how that fan base is going to react throughout that 30-day drop and then those 7 days afterwards. So that would be kind of the big thing. And then for the purposes of the fraud and kind of that freight forwarding mitigation, I guess you would want to, the best place to always start is go into Shopify or whatever platform you're using and filter to the highest value order, right?
Yeah.
And just look at that $10,000 order and go, is this a super fan or is this a freight forwarder, right? And then say, what does the address look like? Is it shipping to a warehouse? Is it shipping to a residential address? And then just kind of go down the list. And if you start to notice certain patterns, humans are really good at noticing patterns, right? Notice the patterns and start to dissect it, and then build your knowledge base from there and say, all right, now we have a freight forwarder belt. And now we know, like, okay, well, I need to pay a little bit more attention to an order from Florida or from Oregon or whatever. And you just build back from there and say, oh man, this customer, whatever their name is, they do this all the time and they keep coming back. So that means that there's a cyclical behavior here, right? So those would kind of be the 3 pillars that I would start with.
Amazing. Honestly, Michael, we've learned so many nuggets from this conversation. You've got to be our best guest yet.
Come on, you say that to everybody.
No, I don't actually, but I will end on one last note. What would you like our listeners to know about Front Row?
Honestly, like for me, Front Row has been a really, really incredible experience to, be part of. It's been barely a year, and I feel like I have learned a lot and I've grown a lot. And I think the idea of fan experience is something that is obviously highly pertinent to what I do in the music industry. But as I talked about earlier, it also has to do with entertainment at large. And I think even from there, you could attribute it to honestly anything that you're selling. And even if you don't have to have that approach, it's at least maybe a mindset or a philosophy that you can call upon in certain moments and say, if I'm selling toothpaste, why can I not have a connection with this person that they can feel like when they get their toothpaste, shipped to their door or whatever, that they're so excited to get that toothpaste that day? Just some sort of way of involving that into an ethos. And so I think that for me, Front Row is something that is trying to encapsulate that and something that is trying to push that into a marketplace. And in a time where everybody is talking about how, AI and automation can increase, your ROI and trying to streamline and efficiency things with bots and everything like that, and trying to do things as cheaply as possible. My goal is to try to be a premium product in the marketplace and provide somebody with a unique and superior experience that is something that they can feel some sort of brand affinity to.
I love that. And I really love that tagline, actually. Going from customer experience to fan experience is a transformational way of looking at it. So thank you so much, Michael.
For sure.
Like I said, it's been an incredible learning journey this past episode. Thank you for coming on and chatting with us. And thank you for being such a wonderful partner to us.
Anytime. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.